last episode, we showed you around Whitby, visited the ruins of a historic abbey, explained about the drama with our engine, and finally sailed out of Whitby.
In this week's episode, we board a 200-year-old warship, show you around the party atmosphere of Hartlepool Marina, and set sail again further north. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Gavin and James Sailing. We're currently in Seaham. When we were speaking to people this summer about where to stop on the East Coast, not many people said that stopped here, and we didn't really understand why. So we made the decision to come because we thought it looked quite nice, and we're so glad that we did because it's absolutely stunning around here. There's so many lovely places to visit, and the marina is so lovely, and everybody is really friendly, so we're really glad that we stopped.
Yeah, it's a right little gem of a place. And I'm wearing this hat because my hair is far too long, because I've not been able to get in at the Takaza hair salon because he had the last appointment. And you know what it's like these days, you just can't get any staff.
At the end of last week's episode, we mentioned about our journey from Whitby to Hartlepool and how James had a few spatial awareness issues. It was a really good journey until the last maybe hour and a half, and it got a little bit scary.
Horrific. So yeah, I'll tell you what happened then. So we set off from Whitby, and it was a lovely day. It was sunny. There was probably about 15 knots of wind, so we were sailing really well. It was a southwesterly wind, so it was kind of behind us, so nice conditions. And yeah, we were doing 5 or 6 knots. And I had passage plans, and I was looking at the line on my passage, and even though we was going in the right direction, we were gradually getting further and further offshore. But because I'm a little bit new to this cruising thing, and I didn't realise how far offshore we were going, and everything just looked so near. So as we was approaching like the Hartlepool area, we had to go at the back of a wind farm, which I'll show you in a second. And I thought we was much nearer to the wind farm than what we were. So we needed to be 2 miles offshore to go on the back of the wind farm. But we ended up being about 6 miles offshore. But the issue with that on this particular day is because the wind was coming from the land, the further out to sea the wind was getting, the stronger it was getting, but also the worse it was making the sea stay. So as we was approaching the wind farm, it started getting not very nice out there. The wind was building, and the sea was getting like quite a bit more choppy. And then after about a half an hour of that, I looked around and there were just white caps everywhere on every wave. And
it was really scary.
The wind.
At one point, I just shut my eyes.
the wind went up to, it was about 35 knots, and yeah, it was horrific. And we had one reef in anyway, so I then reefed the jib, but that didn't make no difference. So then I put a second reef in the main. It still wasn't any good, so we actually put the jib in completely. But then we needed to tack into the wind to get into Hartlepool, and that was about a 6 mile journey of like going into the wind and the waves as well. And the waves were coming over the bow, and it was just, yeah, it just wasn't very nice. And even though, because the wind was coming off the land, the waves weren't huge, but they were really close together and just really angry and vicious with all the white caps everywhere. So
we were soaked, weren't we?
Yeah, we were soaked and stressed. But we did use the engine in the last couple of miles, and it worked really well. So all that work that we had done in the last episode, it's really paid off. And at least we've got an engine now that we can trust. And the funny thing is, when we actually arrived in Hartlepool, it was like nothing had ever happened. It was like
it was calm as anything.
It was calm, sunny, and there's like us arriving like we've nearly been perished at sea.
It was our tiny little yacht with massive ships just like going along. It was just horrendous.
Because
but also hilarious at the same time.
There's the shipping lane that goes into the Tees, which is by the wind farm as well. So there was, and because we were so far out, there was like oil tankers and container ships, and yeah,
they must have just been looking at us and thinking, what are these two clowns doing?
And I'll show you on here. So so this is Navionics, and this is where we left Whitby. And we was coming up here. This is the line that I should have been sticking to, So as you can see, when I've passage planned, where's the wind farm? The wind farm is there. We was just going on the back of it, but we ended up being more like out here, and that's like where the weather was really bad. So our learning for next time is to stick to the passage planning.
So now on to today's video. So to start with, we're going to take you on a tour around a 200-year-old warship. A lot of the times these things are replicas, but this one is actually the real ship.
So today we're off to the Royal National Navy Museum in Hartlepool. We're going to board the oldest floating warship in Europe, which is the HMS Trincomalee. I'm not quite sure if I'm saying that right, but she's over 200 years old. Just thought I'd point out this really cool floating bungalow. It's in the middle of Hartlepool Marina. HMS Trincomalee is 150 foot long and 39 foot wide and was built in Bombay between 1815 and 1817 at the request of the British Admiralty. Trincomalee was launched in Bombay in 1817 and sailed to Portsmouth, where she arrived in 1819. It wasn't until 1845 that HMS Trincomalee was first commissioned by the Royal Navy for service and left Portsmouth in September 1847 for North America and the West Indies under the command of Captain Richard Warren and 240 crew. Trincomalee had 2 commissions and then arrived in Hartlepool in 1862 as a Royal Navy Reserve training ship, where she stayed for 15 years. After Hartlepool, HMS Trincomalee spent another 20 years or so training in Southampton before being sold as scrap in 1897 to an entrepreneur. During the next 100 years, Trincomalee was used as an accommodation and training ship around the south coast and returned to Hartlepool in 1987, where the restoration began. Okay, so let's go aboard. So we're heading into the stern of the ship. This is the captain's cabin. Definitely one of the most comfortablest areas of the ship. Writing desk there. Windows all across the stern. And into this tiny room, this will be the captain's toilet, or rather just a bucket in a hole. It's got a nice view though. And there's another toilet across. We're now heading out onto the upper deck. There's loads of cannons out here. And now we climb up onto the outside deck. Got more cannons out here. The masts are huge. There's beautiful woodwork as well. Most of the British tall ships were made of oak, but this one's made of teak, as this was easier to get hold of in Bombay. So we're now down to the lower deck. This is where the crew would have eaten and slept. It's surprising how low the ceilings are. It's actually quite hard walking around, so I can't even nearly stand up. I think there'll have been a lot of bad backs back then. Here we have some of the hammocks. So the sailors would just hang hammocks anywhere they could find hooks. They were normally quite close together and cramped. This is the officers' mess. It's a self-contained room where the officers would have eaten, finer dining table, and the officers' cabins were just round the outside. This is an example.
And this is the bow. This must be like the anchor chains. And we're going to go downstairs again.
This is known as the hold.
And this is where I'd be found. This is full of beer. Look at all these barrels. Don't know if you can see it, it's a bit dark in here. This is where they'd have kept all the beers and like the food. The size of these ropes. And so we head up here to the ammunition room, which is a copper lined room. It's tiny. The door's tiny as well. I don't know if you can make this out, but the walls and the ceiling, it's all copper. This room used to be guarded at all times. I wouldn't like to be the guard though. You wouldn't be able to stand up at all.
We would definitely recommend the National Royal Navy Museum. It was really good value for money, and we were actually there most of the day.
Yeah, it even gets you into the Museum of Hartlepool as well.
We loved our stay in Hartlepool. It was really nice to go somewhere that had a lot of bars, a lot of shops, and loads of different things to do. And it was a really good mix of kind of doing nice things, but also having a bit of a lively night out, shall we say.
So we're going to show you a few clips of what it was like around the marina, as there was all bars and restaurants lined all the way around.
We left Hartlepool for Seaham, and it was a really, really lovely sail. It was really refreshing actually, because we'd had obviously a couple of bad experiences. I really enjoyed it. I felt really relaxed. We got to use the auto helm and actually just sit back and relax, which I hadn't had before, so I was really enjoyed that.
And make a nice cup of tea. Everything just seemed to go to plan.
Which is not like us at all.
Yeah, we're off.
Can I get on it?
Yeah, you get on now.
Please start moving. Yeah.
When we get in the lock, we've forgotten to put our life jackets on.
Right, so you've got first one, do the back one.
Maybe if you just hold it and then I'll pass you on, yeah. You just grab the rail.
So that's probably not the best way to do it. Did you see what happened? So when I jumped off, there was a patch of oil on the pontoon, and because we were going quite fast, I jumped off, slid, and nearly slid right across into the water at the other side of the pontoon. Thankfully, I didn't, because I'd have been fuming.
And just in case you missed it, we'll just show the footage again. So we've got a new scuff now on the side of the boat where the boat hit the pontoon, but it just adds to the collection. Luckily it will polish off. So back to the video. Well, we've set off from Hartlepool and it's beautiful out here today, but there's not as much wind as what was forecast though, so we are sailing, but we're only doing, how much are we doing?
At the minute, 1.8.
1.8 knots, so we're going to have a cup of tea and see how it goes, but we might put the engine on motor for a little bit, because we need to be at Seaham really before 6 o'clock. Because the lock gate shuts at 6:30, so, but hopefully we'll be there about 4 if we stick the engine on. We've also, for the first time, trying our auto helm. I actually really like it.
Oh, 3.8 knots.
Oh, we've gone up to 3.8 knots. And another thing, I'll just show you inside. We're making a cup of tea with an electric kettle. We used to use gas, but we've now got an inverter which is just under here. And we have a 1000-watt kettle which runs on it.
Going up now. Wait. You're gonna be waiting like, oh, it's going. 5.5.
Oh, there you go, then, Gavin.
5.5. Right, you're not still recording me, are you?
Yeah. We're saying something.
No.
How was your tea?
Delicious. Welcome to Seaham. Seaham really is a lovely place, and the marina staff have been absolutely amazing. When we arrived, there was 2 of them on hand just to welcome us in, and they gave us a lovely welcome pack. And yeah, they couldn't have been any more helpful, really. They were absolutely brilliant.
It was like we had a little welcome committee when we came in. So guys, that's it for this episode. So thank you so much for watching. If you've liked the video, please like, subscribe and comment, because we love reading all your comments. I'd just like to say a massive thank you to our first couple of coffees that have come through as well. So we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And if anyone else wants to support us on the journey, head over to our coffee page. The link is in the description of the video.
So in next week's video, we'll show you around Seaham. We go collecting some sea glass. We take you on a trip around a really unusual beach, which was actually used for filming in one of the Alien films. And we also talk about the lifeboat and explain about the disaster of 1962.
Thanks guys, see you later.
There's going to be about 300 takes of this. Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Gavin and James Sailing. We're currently in Seaham. After speaking to a lot of people this summer, I'm never going to get this intro done.
Good outtake that if you can hear that.
Right.